FOMO.
My name is Patrick J. McGinnis, and I'm a FOMO Sapiens. And since you're here, I'm going to bet that you are too. And when you're like us and Monday comes around, you don't dread the new week. No, you wake up every Monday morning knowing that this week might just be the best one yet. This is FOMOnday, the snackable show that starts your week right with hot takes, life hacks, listener mail, and even some FOMO therapy. Hey everybody, welcome to FOMOnday, the companion show to FOMO Sapiens. Of course, we'll be back on FOMO Sapiens on Thursday, but let's start the week together. Happy FOMOnday, the best day of the week. I'm your host, Patrick McGinnis, venture capitalist by day, author and podcaster by night. And as you know, FOMO Sapiens 24/7. Now, last week we talked about jazz and business and improvisation. And I was listening to that conversation the other day as I was preparing the edit. And I thought, I know somebody who knows a lot about this topic, my very own brother. And so I decided that we're going to have him on the show to talk a bit more about improvisation. Now, my brother, Mike McGinnis, is a clarinetist, saxophonist, and composer who I've been listening to my entire life. And he has worked, not just for, played for me, he has worked with some of today's most innovative and influential artists, people from like Ravi Coltrane, the band Yo La Tango. He's played all over the place on Broadway, TV, movies. He also teaches music and improvisation. I once saw him play with Barry Manilow. I mean, he does it all. And of course, he wrote the theme to this show. Now, if you want to find out more about my brother, you can, of course, go to MikeMcGinnis.com. Same spelling as me, naturally. Or you can check him out on Instagram at MCGmusic. But first, before you do that, let's talk to Mike about improvisation. Mike, thanks for being here.
Hello. Thank you for having me, little brother.
My pleasure. So I want to start with a question that I asked our guest on the episode last week, which is, who's your favorite jazz artist? I know it's not an easy one to answer, but give us somebody that we should be listening to that maybe we aren't listening to right now.
Well, I guess the first musician that inspired me was the saxophonist and composer Charlie Parker, who was one of the master improvisers, and certainly that was a time where in jazz the improvisation became the sole focus of the music, whereas beforehand it was always just a part of the song that would give a little section for the soloist to improvise and express themselves. But now that's one of the movements that he was part of, and so yeah, Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk, Duke Ellington, as far as for dead people.
Okay, and how about some living women? One
of my favorite improvising musicians that I can think of is a saxophonist named Caroline Davis. She's certainly wonderful. There's a great, I can just add lists and lists of people. There's a pianist named Myra Melford, who's one of my favorite composers of all time. Carla Bley, who's almost 90 years old, is one of my favorite composers of all time, who's around writing great music. And all these people are also, if they're coming from the jazz creative music tradition, then it's inherent that they're improvisers, first of all.
Yeah, totally. All right, good. You passed that test. Now let's get into it. So I want to talk about improvisation, and you're somebody who teaches people how to do that, and people of all ages. And so just to start out, when you're teaching somebody about improvisation, what is the first thing you do?
Usually the main barrier I have with improvising students is their own ability to conceive or inconceive of what improvisation is. People approach it with a lot of concepts that a lot of expectations of what it's supposed to come out like. And the thing I feel you need to do as an improviser is first clear your mind of any expectations so that you're not trying to force something, and so that you can be open to responding to what comes. And so usually the fear with people is that they're going to do something wrong, or in music that would be play a wrong note. And so many musicians, when they play jazz, they want it to sound like what they think jazz sounds like. So if they're improvising and it doesn't sound like that, they get frustrated. They think it's wrong. So what I break it down to is just getting to what improvising is in its essence, which is really just doing something that's not premeditated. And even within music, it's a type of composition. Like there's composing when you sit down and you might write something or work something out and take a lot of time to work on it and edit it and refine it. But then there's composing when you're just doing it right off the top of your, just like improv poetry or spoken word, just like we do all the time. And so people's fears about it needing to sound good or whatever expectation they have a lot of times is a blockage. And so there's a lot of exercises that we do that I've learned from, theater, from working with actors, from working with improv theater, and discipline from other areas of life.
Yeah, you're right. It's like getting out of your comfort zone and preconceived notions of what something's supposed to be. It makes sense that and you're right. I just think about when you taught me how to improvise, and like, I thought I had to sound a certain way. And then I learned, of course, no. That being said, I have a question for you that I've never asked you, which is, are there rules? Like, are there rules to improvisation?
There are rules, but there are rules that are dependent on the context. If I'm improvising, say, in a country setting, I'm going to improvise in a way that I wouldn't call them rules, but I'm just using the context of what the music needs at that moment and trying to fit into that context. Now, there are times where you might, just in as in a conversation or a real life thing, you might feel the need to say something that goes against the grain. And that's also, as your improviser, it takes the awareness and the control. And I guess this is where the practice comes in, so that you can, whatever you're trying to achieve in the given setting, you can do. So you can either fit in and really assimilate that language, or you can go against it. For instance, if I was playing a Rolling Stones type song, the assimilation would be to play a solo that was very much in the style of Rolling songs, heavy rock saxophone. I wouldn't go and play like Charlie Parker, not because it's wrong or the rules, but it's just not the best choice there. It wouldn't sound as good. So it's preference, and it is, you know what I'm saying? It's rules, but it's kind of like cooking. It's like there's no rules, but it tastes good, but even that is subjective.
Yeah, you're right. No, I just, as you're talking, I'm thinking like, you could get into this mindset that like, well, we're improvising, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw the instruments against the wall. And maybe one time you do that and it's actually interesting and like it does something. But if you just go into different bands and you just keep throwing things against the wall, at some point, like, you're not really adding a lot of value to the musical experience for yourself and others. FOMO. Now, I do want to ask you, as somebody who teaches people about creativity and has been an advisor of mine in my own creative journey, what is something we can do? What are the things that we can do on a daily basis to cultivate a mindset that will help us to improvise?
Sure. Well, the best teachers that I had, they all kind of went to the same thing, which is first of practicing your awareness, which seems like a obvious thing. It's like, how do you do that? Well, it's practicing actually consciously working on your senses. So I'll give you a musical example that this one teacher named Michael Caine told me to do. Because he noticed that even though when I was in an improvising setting, I could be very good at just generating stuff and throwing stuff out there. But then in terms of what was going on in the overall ensemble of people, and also having the balance between what's going on in your head, but you also need to be listening and responding, but not just reacting all the time. So it's really a nuanced thing. It's the ability to be creating something at one moment while also sensing everything that's going around, and then having the ability and awareness within that to say, I can react to that, or I'm not going to react to that, and then to have a range of choices of how to react to that. So the first step with that in music was learning how to hear all the parts of the ensemble all at once. So an exercise was training your listening awareness. And so what he advised was take one track. In this particular track, I think it was the Thelonious Monk Quartet, which was saxophone, piano, bass, and drums, and listen to it 5 times. The first time, focus on the drums. Second time, focus on the bass. Third time, focus on the piano. Last time, saxophone. And then listen to all of it. When I did that, when I listened to it again, all of a sudden I noticed so much more. And that was awareness, noticing. It's the same thing. Another experience I had similar was just walking around New York City with this teacher, and he was pointing out all these things that I didn't see. And I just realized, all right, I'm not that aware. So I just need to practice using my senses. And it's, something that goes completely against the grain in our day, because we walk around now, even with a mask, with everything blocked off and kind of like blocked off from the outside.
Well, I've tried this thing before, which I think everybody should try, which is like walk down the street and just pay attention to everything around you. Like, look at the leaves, look at the gum on the street, look at every line on the sidewalk. And you start to realize that, like, on a daily basis, we don't pay attention to much. And so being able to direct your attention and notice things is really powerful. Now, I want to ask you one last question. So you spend your life improvising. I'm curious, like, what in the other parts of your life has your skill in improvising made sort of more powerful for you? Like, for example, I'll give you, like, I meditate every day, you meditate every day. Like, what does that give me? Well, I don't freak out, right? So when you're really good at improvising, are there certain other things in your life that you just do better?
Sure. Well, I would say that the main reason that I got into a lot of things like meditation or all kinds of practices like that, for me, were all about becoming a better improviser, really, and a better artist. And I would just see like, well, maybe just trying different things that were helping. And what it made me realize of why all these things are kind of connected, and you read about it, is because what these things give us is adaptability. And adaptability is really the most, I think you need it anyways, especially now. And adaptability, and then also another thing is the ability to let things go. And for instance, like when I'm improvising in a setting, I can hear a million things that I would want to play, but that doesn't mean just because I'm hearing it in my head that that's the right choice to make at that moment. And sometimes the best thing you can do is not play and leave the space in there, because that's what it needs. And so having the adaptability to, when all your plans go completely awry, to not freak out and just stand there in the mess. And that's what we really need. In any situation in life when our expectations aren't met, that's a lot of times when people get mad. And when you get mad, especially if you go into fight or flight, you don't have all your best skills at your disposal. So if you can be adaptable and improvising becomes a practice that's familiar, then when things change and you all of a sudden have to change plan, you don't freak out anymore. It becomes more of a play. Or there's a great book called Free Play by Stephen Nachmanovich, and he uses the phrase lila, which I think is a Sanskrit word, and this kind of represents the overall, it's in all the yin yang, the play. It's about being able to balance in between both of those ultimately. And I think for me, the more adaptable I am, then I'm not caused the stress of not being adaptable.
Listen, this is why I always listen to you, because you have all this wisdom to share. All right, everybody. So you can check out Mike's music. He's on Spotify. He's on all the channels, of course. He's on iTunes. He is everywhere. You can find everything together at MikeMcGinnis.com. You can also find him on Instagram at MCG Music. Mike McGinnis, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me let it flow in a Jack Kerouac free-flowing sense on your radio show.
Oh boy. I'm just say thank you and we'll edit it out.
All right. Thank you.
Do it like clean.
Thank you for having me. It was delightful to talk to you today. Don't
be a dick. I'm leaving all of this in now to show how obnoxious you are. FOMO. Can't get enough of FOMO Sapiens? Join me on Patreon for ad-free episodes, bonus material, and exclusive content that will help you to master FOMO and position yourself for greater success in both business and life. Go to patreon.com/FOMO Sapiens to learn more. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis, on Twitter at PJ McGinnis, and on LinkedIn. I love hearing from you, so don't be shy. FOMO. Want more FOMO Sapiens and FOMOnday? Head over to FOMOsapiens.com, where you can listen to past episodes, learn more about the show, and find out how to advertise. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis and on Twitter at PJ McGinnis.